And we're back with some NBA observations right here at the Lakers Fast Break podcast. It's Gerald Glassford coming right back at you here from Lakers Fast Break. Pop Culture Cosmos, where we cover the latest news and trends in pop culture each and every week, twice a week, wherever you get your podcasts. Also, as well, of course, a huge, absolutely huge shout out to our absolutely fantastic members, starting with Xbox. Mark himself in Australia, truly appreciate a sports baby. He is an Indiana Pacers fan from Australia, and he is now a member of the Lakers Fast Break. Also, as well, want to give a big shout out to Bloodhound as well. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't forget Richard Villarroel. Truly appreciate all four of you as members. We are growing our memberships day by day, so go ahead and be part of the fun. $2.99 a month gets you emojis, badges, and big shout outs from me. Will I be adding to it? Who knows? I may just do that. Will we be adding other tiers, adding other features? You're looking into it, so please be part of the fun today right here at the Lakers Fast Break podcast. Also, our good friends, the Lakerholics crew, Lakerholics.com. Hopefully they'll be back after a Labor Day washout weekend for them. Hopefully they'll be back this coming weekend. John Costa, I'm going to try and convince him to come back on the air. I know his all-time Lakers draft didn't go the way he wanted to, but hopefully he'll come back on the air pretty soon, because I'm using his channels, Clutch Talk and Lakers Corner. So big shout out to those two channels there as well. Also as well, John McCalian channel, Lakers in 5, Empire Jeff TV. Of course, also as well, Stone Hansen at report_court. All these great places, and Daniel Barry Sports Highlights. Yo! Also right there on the bottom. Go ahead and check out all these great places today. And also as well, my guests as well, where they're at. So go ahead and check it out today as well. Right there for you. Plus, you've got to support. You got to follow. You got to like. You got to subscribe. Not really hard to do. It's just some clicks here and there. Speaking of liking and subscribing, go ahead and do that for us. We're just at $17.99. 1800 seems to change by the day. 1801 right in there. Help us get comfortably over the 1800 mark by going ahead and subscribing today. Click on that little bell, ding, ding, right there for you to get the latest notifications on when we go live on the air. And we wish you, cool bro, and everybody else in the chat, a truly happy Labor Day from all of us right here at the Lakers Fast Break podcast. Well, I have on some great guests today. They were on previously talking about who did well in the NBA offseason. But this is always the funnest show for me, because I get to go to my evil side, the dark side, as we talk about who did not do so well in the NBA offseason. And here today to discuss, I've got both guys here together. I feel so blessed. One of these days, we got to go ahead and do another one of those drafts like we did that one time. That was awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Let Laker Tom do some crazy trades. Actually, Laker Tom actually made some sound moves for the first time in his life. So maybe I shouldn't criticize him there. But once again, it is, of course, two great, awesome guests. First up, go ahead and check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. Plus, all the things that he's got upcoming on his plate. You can follow him, Alfred Ezman, on Twitter today. It is Alfred Ezman. And, of course, man behind his new Legend channel, which I've got in the description, or I will have in the description by the end of this. I just got to copy and paste. Sometimes I'm bad at that. It will be in the description before the end of the show. It is the Legend350 as well. And guys, great to have you here. As always, truly appreciated. NBA observations. JSJ is already saying, Lakers and Clippers for sure had a bad offseason. All I will say, JSJ, among all us three, because we really didn't talk about that before the show, that's the low-hanging fruit. We're talking about like street level. If this was a tree, the tree would be leaning over with the low-hanging fruit on who had a bad offseason when it comes to Los Angeles teams. So yes, I have a feeling all three of us will mention them in our list of the worst NBA offseason teams. But Alfred, I'm going to start with you. First man up, first man here. Want to go ahead and start with you, my friend. You were going back and forth with me on some definitive teams, 3 definitive teams that you feel did substandard this offseason.
Yeah, I'll let the audience have some fun, and Gerald, you have some fun. Let's talk about the Los Angeles Clippers and everything they did wrong, or that went wrong this offseason. And just to start with them, I mean, you lose Paul George, and that's in and of itself is something huge and no team wants to go through. But not only do you lose him, I think they're going to realize how valuable he was for them. They were noticeably better with him on the floor. In fact, without him out on the floor, they were minus 2.2 points per 100 possessions. That was the difference between Paul George not being out there and him being out there. That is massive. And you really, you don't really get anything of substance in return for him to replace him, or just in general in return. I mean, you get additions in like Derrick Jones Jr. and Kevin Porter Jr. I guess the good thing I could say about Derrick Jones is he can provide a scoring spurt every now and then, but his 3-point shots period pedestrian, right around 35%. And then Kevin Porter Jr., I mean, he had that big scandal last season. He ended up playing in Greece. So he is a year removed from NBA play. What looked promising in NBA play, I believe he was around 15 points per game. But, I mean, if you're depending upon a guy for a lot of scoring who played in Greece, I mean, last season, I don't really know what you can expect. You got to rely on Kawhi Leonard a ton more this season, and it's a guy who has no injuries.
JSJ in the chat is saying they overpaid Zubac. I don't think so. That's $20 million is the going rate for a guy that gets you a double-double, who in the playoffs played better than he did in the regular season. So I'm going to respectfully disagree on that, JSJ. $20 million seems to be the going rate for centers, because centers right now in the NBA, at least productive ones, are at a premium.
Right. Yeah, I think so too. And I mean, we talked about this, Gerald, last time I was on here with the Rockets and what they do with Şengün. Your Şengün, I would imagine, would ask for a similar price, and it's like, well, he has some concerns, but again, it's a premium. Yeah. And it's a premium position, and so the Zubac thing, you can mark it, I guess, as one of the moves you don't think is as good, but there's just so much more to this team. That is just.
I actually love the move. It hurts me as a Lakers fan. We never should let him go, but we talked about that last night. I don't want to go into it again. It just hurts.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and on top, and I'll mention this too about the Clippers. This trade that happened years ago is just going to be monumentally rough. The SGA trade included them giving up their first-round pick this season, so they didn't have that to back them up. Instead, they go get Cam Christie, a familiar last name to people watching, and we'll get into that other brother in a sec when we talk about the Lakers. So, which I thought was hilarious when I was doing.
Watch out, Rodell might be after you.
Right. No, and I was sitting there and I was like, oh my gosh, I know that last name while I was doing this. But they get him out of Minnesota in the second round. Pretty good shooter, actually, when I was looking into him a little bit. But again, I just don't know how much value he's going to provide in his first year as a second-round pick on this team. And I'm going to go ahead and say it. Out of any team in the Western Conference, they are my pick and probably a lot of other people's picks to regress the most. I think there's a chance that they are struggling to fight for a play-in at best. And that it's just, we felt a Paul George exit was coming, but they did not respond to that well. And we're going to see that come alive, and they have to depend upon Kawhi Leonard now, who is already struggling to play full seasons at this point. It's not good in the Clippers organization, but at least they have a new logo to look forward to.
And the new toilet bowl that they have going to. Yes.
Yes.
Logo I seen.
Legend, do you concur? Or no, I'm sorry, Alfred. Go ahead.
I was going to say it's different, but I mean, it's going to, at least hopefully they'll be able to sell seats with a new arena. But besides that, the product on the court is going to take a big step back, I think.
Legend, do you concur that the Clippers may be the #1 spot on your teams that didn't make a difference this postseason?
Yep, he hit everything correctly. That's to me one of the #1. When you just plummet. I got them being at the bottom, and I really don't think they're gonna get in the in-season tournament. I think they're gonna be that horrible. I mean, you're relying on the man who can't stay healthy. I don't know what to tell you.
I see them about 35 wins personally.
Yeah,
maybe 38, but that's puts you in the never land where it doesn't get you a good top draft choice. Most likely, well, unless you're the Hawks, but it doesn't really get, it gives you very bad odds, and you're hoping for a repeat of what the Hawks did. And I don't see that happening for the Clippers. I mean, when your best acquisition is the new Intuit Dome, then that's telling you something right there. Which I drove by during construction, and it looks like now it's underway, hosting concerts, doing everything that they're already ready to go. So it looks like it's going to be a state-of-the-art building, which of course with Steve Ballmer putting in the dollars, absolutely it's going to be all toilet bowl jokes aside. It is going to be a state-of-the-art building. So, but that's the problem. The team that they're putting in it is not going to be the state-of-the-art, and you're depending everything on Kawhi Leonard with iffy knees, who couldn't even stay upright for Team USA for over a week. And that tells you something right there is amiss. And you don't know what, I mean, he's got his own personal health plan, his own personal team doctors, his own personal physicians and all that. So they could just come up to one day to Lawrence Frank and Tyronn Lue and say, hey, he's done for the year. Oh, well, thanks for telling us. He scored 35 last night. Appreciate that. So we could see that happening. And the problem is they replaced him with guys over 30.
Yeah.
Names from the past, really just guys that are not going to be able to fill that slot for Paul George in the same way that they had before. They're riding on a lot of their drafted, somewhat young talent who's not young anymore. I mean, some of these kids are in their mid-20s now that they drafted, that they've really just kept, I guess, down as far as the number of minutes. And Norman Powell, you're relying a lot on Norman Powell being the sixth man of the year once again.
Yeah, and I mean, the biggest thing too that I mentioned second, this SGA trade is just, it continues to just pierce them in the chest over and over, and we're not done. I mean, there's another year.
Thank you, by the way.
yeah, and I mean, we have a few more years. Yeah, we have a few more years of the repercussions of this coming for them. So I mean, they lose a. Go ahead.
Question. Is that the worst trade of this century? I know how much I hate the Westbrook trade, and I think it's the worst Laker trade in history. But I may say the SGA, what it did to both teams, might be worse.
It's up there.
It's up there. I can come up with some magic ones involving Serge Ibaka for, Sabonis, but I mean, that's nothing compared to this. I mean, this is like an MVP, borderline MVP caliber player for scraps, and Paul George, who you did not have for a long time. I mean, I'd probably say it's the worst one I've seen since I've been alive, since 2002. So this century, pretty much.
Yeah, I got to say the same thing. This got to be the worst I've seen. I mean, if I'm Steve Ballmer, I'm crying in the inside right now.
It all depends on who they draft or how do they utilize those draft picks that are coming, still yet to come for the Clippers. But they've done pretty good with this, the picks that they've gotten. Plus, SGA is a top 5 MVP player last season. So yeah,
could have used him now, losing Paul George.
And on top of that, JSJ is mentioning that they could have 39% back-to-backs.
Oh, that sucks. That's awful.
Hope they're all at home.
Yeah.
But all right, Legend. We mentioned the Los Angeles Clippers, and once again, it is Legend350 and also as well Alfred Ezman. Please go ahead and support the great work that they do today. Legend350 on his new channel, which will be in the description here. in a second, and also be in the description for everybody out there listening on podcasts, and Alfred Ezman on Orlando Magic Daily. So I ask you this, Legend. Who do you have as your, since we already mentioned the Clippers, who do you have as a team you thought underwhelmed this offseason?
The one I really got to say, and I know a lot of the audience probably feel this way too, I got to go with the Lakers. I have to ask, bro, what the hell was front office doing this whole season?
That's the picture I put on the JPEG for today with Rob Palenka. You know, that's the look you get when you don't do jack bleep during the course of the summer. So
I just can't believe they did nothing. I can't believe you just did absolutely nothing.
What do you mean? They signed Max Christie, Rodell's favorite player, to a 4-year, $32 million contract, you know, and basically bid amongst themselves. They bid, overbid, and overpaid for a guy that they probably could have gotten on the cheap. But, you know,
Cam Christie's brother, by the way, if anyone was wondering. So
maybe after he finishes contract, he will be known as Cam Christie's brother. But
yeah.
But Legend, what really stood out to you as far as the Lakers' ineptitude this offseason?
It's to me what got me the most about them is the fact that you saw how the last 2 years have went with this group, and the fact that you didn't try to adjust to some spots is what concerned me. And the part that really got me the most is the Bronny James situation the most. You focus so much on that and not worrying about this overall roster that you got instead of making the improvement. I feel like you're worrying more about, let me make LeBron James' son happy. That's just how I'm going to look a little bit in some spots.
The concern with me on that, Legend, and I've said this several times, I think you guys have heard me before, but it bears repeating again. I know what Joe says about it. You know, it's all about what's going on, clicks and things like that, as far as the attention it gets, et cetera, et cetera. For me, it's the fact that you committed those kind of years. The money is what it is for a spot in the draft that in the last 10 years, Legend and Alfred, and I'll let you go next, Alfred, as far as touch on the Lakers. In the last 10 years, only one player at that spot in the draft has gotten a second contract. That is a concern to me. So 90% of the previous guys that have been drafted at that slot have failed, including Isaiah Wong, who was moved somewhere else. He was last year's pick at that slot, didn't make it. And now you're expecting Bronny James with all these odds against you, and you commit to him for what, 3+1, I think, if memory serves. So that's a big ask. That is a big ask for someone you picked at that end of the draft. But yes, your thoughts, Legend, you hit it right on the mark. They did nothing to improve the areas of need that you know, Joe and I talked about last night. Rebounding was a terrible issue for us, and they did nothing there. They did nothing to really improve the roster. They got Dalton Connect, yes, who I know you and I like, but a lot has to go right for Dalton Connect. I think essentially he has to play at a rookie of the year level in order for the Lakers to be in a spot that will be competitive in Western Conference. But Alfred, touch on why you had them also on your list that you sent me just before we went on the air, why the Lakers had to you a terrible offseason.
Yeah, surprise. They were on mine too. And you had to get some sort of, I think we know who the main guys and contributors are going to be with, you know, D'Angelo Russell, Austin Reeves, at least offensively on some nights, LeBron, Anthony Davis. It's all about rotationally. How do you fix and patch that up? Because you also lose Taurean Prince and Spencer Dinwiddie for whatever they were worth this past season. So you have to replace those names as well. They signed Max Christie, and outside of that, got their 2 rookies, and that's it. And even if Dalton Connect and Bronny were to somehow both have pretty good seasons, which, you know, Joe will tell you and other people in the chat will tell you is not likely, they're not going to be able to carry this rotational workload, you know, for the Lakers, and when they don't have their stars out there on the floor, and they can get pulled apart pretty easily. I mean, you know, and I think a lot of people were expecting Bronny to have some sort of maybe flash in Summer League. And what, Gerald, did he shoot like 23% from the field and did not make a 3? I mean,
no, he did.
He made one.
3.
He made 3.
At the end, I believe at the end he made 3.
Okay.
My account was he made more than 1. I think he made 3 total. He made 1 in one game. He made 2 in another. But the game I saw live, first off, his first game in Las Vegas at the Summer League, where he was 0 for 10, 0 for 0 for 8 from behind the 3-point line. It was bad. It was terrible. But he started to play more competently. But people are equating his 11 and 12-point games like, let's say, I don't know, Reed Shepherd. Like we were talking about Reed Shepherd the other day about how fantastic a player he was doing, scoring 20 and 25. They're equating his 11 and 12-point games to what Dalton Knecht was doing at the end when he was scoring 20 to 25 points a game. So I don't get it. I don't understand it. That people, just because the name on the back of his jersey, are giving him more of a pass. And I think that's a problem. You've got a 6'1" defensive guard that may or may not be able to play defense because of his height. He doesn't play make. He doesn't shoot well statistically. At this point, it's a real development issue, and I really would have put Clutch. I don't care what their threats were. I really would have put them back on their heels and say, you know what? I'm going to go undrafted with you. I don't think I'm going to dare another NBA team to draft him, and they didn't look like they were going to do so.
Yeah.
And I would have gotten him as an undrafted. I would have said, you want to come on the Lakers? We'll sign you to an Exhibit 10, and there you go. Get the least amount, because that's the smallest contract you can offer while still retaining his rights.
Right. And he needs nothing more than that. I mean, I am terrified for him when he steps on an NBA floor in a regular season this year if he does it all.
They would target him. If all 3 of us could play in the league right now and we saw him coming off the bench, we'd be like zeroing in on him just to see him getting the highlights. Oh, look at Bronny getting slammed on and posterized once again.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's very concerning. And it seems like beyond this and Max Christie and Dalton Knecht too, you really didn't add anything rotationally that helps. And that's going to hurt you down the stretch. And overall, I mean, outlook wise for the season, unless they add someone else, Markelle Fultz, which I hinted at last, episode, but I digress.
But they can't do that. They're up against the cap.
Right.
They have to waive and stretch one of their guys. Because although the Exhibit 10s, they can put him on Exhibit 10 like Boston did Lonnie. Boston gets Lonnie Walker the 4th on Exhibit 10. The Lakers, why don't you do the same thing? But they sign, again, guys that probably will never make an NBA rotation to those slots. It just seems baffling that because of the new finances, the way things are, some of these guys, these veterans, you need to take a chance on that may be able to help you. You're not doing it.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just, there's no answer right now for that. So going back to what I said, I mean, outlook season wise for them, I can't see them getting beyond a play-in spot, really. I mean, it just seems that it's just like the same exact thing as last year at best. And the only way you get beyond that, one of the only ways right now I think you get beyond that, is if you get some kind of, like we said, all rookie I won't even say rookie of the year, but all rookie season out of Dalton Knecht, which can happen. I mean, I have a lot of faith in the guy and I love him to death. I rant about him all the time, but it's just a lot on the back of a rookie, and it's hard, concerning. And I don't, beyond what you have in the starting lineup, they really didn't address anything that was different from last year. And they even lost guys from last year's rotational depth. So I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see, but it's hard to see them getting beyond a play-in spot again, if anything.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Legend, any last thoughts on the Lakers before we move on?
I gotta agree with Alfred on that one. It's hard to see it, and that's a lot to put on Dalton starting off.
Yeah,
he gotta be that great in order to make up for Pelinka and them mistakes for all summer. And I just hope in the long run, maybe Bronny will turn into something to make all this focus on him benefit. But right now, it just don't look like it. Like he's gonna go to the regular tradition as a 55 pick and just disappear in a year or two.
Well, again, what impresses me about Dalton, again, I told you, Legend and Alfred, the story, I think, after that game I saw live, while the 30 members of the media were huddling around him and the 5 members of the media were huddling around, or lack thereof, around Reed Shepherd. Dalton Connect was outside meeting with the fans, meeting with his parents, I believe, and meeting with teammates, and just the way he was interacting, you can see that this kid is humbled. This kid is ready to help. This kid is ready to produce, and you can see that he has qualities that I think that might be transferable to some success in the league. But again, it's all about defense, as we discussed, Alfred. And if his defense doesn't get to even a below average or slightly below average point, not a really below average where it was during the summer league, where it gets to a point where it's getting close to an average spot, then again, that to me would be all the difference. I'm not asking him to be a defensive stopper. I'm just asking him not to be a turnstile. Yeah. And I think the Lakers would be very appreciative of that, because then he's out there, he's shooting probably close to 40%, if not over, and he's getting a ton of minutes on and ton of experience on this Lakers team.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we said it last time too. It's, offensively at some point in his career, he's going to be a pretty good scorer in some facet, probably not as a number 1 option, but a decent contributor on a team that's, getting close to being a playoff team. And that's kind of the spot he's in now. It's just the defense that's into question. And if he can get that, like you said, at an average point, he's going to probably be one of, if not the top rotational guy the Lakers have. I'll say one of them. So that's the biggest thing. But again, it's a lot on his back, and I don't know if it'll get the Lakers over a hump of a play-in spot that they need to get over.
44.5 wins is what they're projected here in Vegas, which would put them around 10th or 11th in the Western Conference. And as you and I both know, guys, it's not going to get it done. But
right.
Need I digress on that? Alfred, your turn, my friend. We have discussed the Clippers and the Lakers as having the kind of off season that makes you go, wah, wah, wah. So with that said, who else had a stinker of an off season?
Yeah, one that I think had a meh one. There wasn't a whole lot they could do to kind of just improve themselves totally, but it's one that they really kind of just were pedestrian in what they did. I'm going to go with the Charlotte Hornets.
Isn't that a rite of passage for them?
Yeah, it's got to be. Got to be. I mean, it's got to, because once again, the one good thing that they do have going is they're pretty good in cap space, and they can help that a lot if they were to. One of the biggest moves I think they'd make this season if they were to trade away LaMelo Ball. And I got a question for you guys, actually. How many games has LaMelo Ball played in the last 2 seasons combined?
I actually said it the other day. I think it was like in the
I forgot
40s?
what it was. It's not high.
In the 40s,
it's
I
not
think.
high at all. Like something under 50.
Yeah, it's under 50, I believe. So,
58.
58. Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
58.
Yeah, in the 2 seasons.
So, yeah, in 2 seasons, he's played over a little more than half a season. And I mean, at this point, if they're paying him, I don't know how much. He's the highest paid guy on the team. And if they want to get rid of that somehow, they need to find a way to deal him, because it's just he hasn't been on the court enough to kind of make a difference for this team. And so the direction I think they're starting to take is Brandon Miller. Brandon Miller, I loved what he had his rookie season, 17 points per game. Was a pretty good shooter too, actually. 44% from the field, 37% from 3. I think there's a good chance we could see him be a 40% shooter from beyond the arc. If the Hornets get that, they have a really good player on their hands. But beyond him, meh. I mean, Reggie Jackson, you add him. He's an older, experienced vet, 10 points a game. Nothing crazy. He's not going to move a needle for them to be better than they were a year ago. Josh Green, same thing. He had health issues too. He played 57 games last year. Kind of like what I said about Derrick Jones Jr., scoring spark off the bench. I just don't know. Again, not the biggest needle mover on planet Earth at all, especially if he takes the role I think the Hornets are going to make him take. And then their draft pick, Saloon, TJ was their draft pick at 6. I'm going to call him TJ just because of his name. But you guys know what I'm talking about. It was the first move, at least in the draft, where I was like, wow, what? That it was a reach in my opinion. I guess the one way you can look at it, he's a a crafty wing. You know, if anything, that's what I've been hearing from people. He's got a decent shooter's touch. Kind of, it'll be, I guess, you know, you could see that work on the other side from Brandon Miller. But again, I mean, they passed on guys like Donovan Clingan, Rob Dillingham, Bub Carrington, although Carrington probably would have been a reach. Dalton Connect. I mean, there's a huge one they passed on who was, I mean, Dalton Connect was a steal for LA at the spot they got him at. I just, they did really made some strange moves that don't push them in another direction. I think they need to address LaMelo Ball sooner rather than later. You have Brandon Miller and you have some cap space, but I have a hard time thinking that they're going to finish ahead of anyone else in the East other than maybe the Pistons or Wizards, and that's it.
He is terrible on defense. I get that. And in July, I took about 20 minutes discussing why that if it goes south in Charlotte, I think the Lakers should entertain that possibility of getting him on the cheap with whatever limited assets they have. I think would be
right.
Thing. I understand he's terrible on defense. I understand that may not equate to winning. I understand that he is a health risk. But you guys are talking. Our audience talks about Zach LaVine, who is pushing 30 and has terrible knees. You're talking about other players like in Portland. Just lost my train of thought on as far as a Portland guy. Grant,
yes,
who is one of the worst contracts that it's out there. At least LaMelo Ball is 23, 24 in that range.
Let me double check.
And
let me double check.
You got a guy that averages close to a triple double. Yes, he is a stats guy. Yes, it doesn't equate to winning all the time, but maybe in a different environment, it could lead to something better. You know, again, if you're able to get him for maybe just to throw in a 1, you know, and some fodder, why not? But then again, that's only if it goes south, and if it continues to go south, and LaMelo Ball winds and his way out there, that's something you might want to look into. But I know, again, Kurt Affair and others are vehemently against it, and I understand why. I understand it's like, okay, I understand what I see on paper, I understand what I see as potential, but I also see what the end result is as far as, like you said, 58 games in 2 years, and and really it's gone south. But Legend, do you concur with Alfred on his assessment of the Charlotte Hornets having a misfire of an offseason?
I got to agree with that as well, because just like you said with LaMelo, he just not on the court that much, and kind of reminds me a lot of how Alonzo's been gone for so long, too. Both of them dealing with injuries and all, and LaMelo's a really good player. Yeah,
he is. It can be, but it all depends on how desperate the Lakers get, if they really want to go the route. Because I mean, I hear all these names all the time about Ben Simmons in the past couple of years, and again, Zach LaVine, Grant. I hear all these other names that just make me scratch my head. What kind of problems are you bringing into the organization by giving away all your assets for that? At least this kid is young. At least this kid still has his prime ahead of him. At least he still has a chance to get his act together. I understand the last 4 letters of his last name, Ball, may be a problem after what we experienced the last time we had a Ball on the Lakers. But again, if you're able to get him on the cheap, at least you got to think about it just for the sake of possibly doing something better for your team down the road.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're, it's like, to reiterate what I said about him.
Yeah, and Alan doesn't like it. Again, he's very divisive.
Right.
And again, I get, sorry, Alfred, but yeah, I see
you're good.
They're just very divisive on who LaMelo Ball.
Right. No, and rightfully so. I mean, I think I haven't given up on LaMelo Ball, and I like what you said a lot about him, Gerald. I've almost about given up on him in Charlotte, though. That's how I'll clarify myself there.
Take a chance on him.
Right. Oh, yeah. And I mean, someone in the chat, I'm not going to scroll up, but someone mentioned, but we'll take 3 or 4 first rounders, or
But the Lakers would take all of the picks. We'll take the picks and LaMelo. No, it doesn't work like that. So
yeah, and I mean, we just have to. I think if he starts getting hurt or isn't playing games again up until the trade deadline, you're going to have to find a way to deal him out. And you have
malcontent of some type.
Right. I mean, and again, you have Brandon Miller, who I think is great in his own right. He just has absolutely zilch around him to work with. So it's somewhere to build.
Here in Charlotte.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're in the
North Carolina person that might be of interest to them, right? In a few months.
Cooper Flags. I mean, they're going to be in the Cooper Flag sweepstakes for sure with a team we're going to talk about that we talked about last time. I thought did pretty well this offseason that you have opposite feelings on, but they're between all of us, I feel like they're a shoe-in for those lottery sweepstakes for him. So, yeah, I mean, I just don't think they did anything to kind of improve themselves, and they just got a bunch of meh that's not going to really move them in any sort of positive direction. So I just have them as I think it's you know, a better off season than I would say the Clippers, and that's in regards to what situations the teams are in, you know, as far as competing goes. But it's not one that just pops off the page at you in any regard. So they're the other team on my list that I had having a bad one.
I can say there is one positive I will bring up about LaMelo Ball is at least LeVar Ball went quiet and kind of backed off, got out the spotlight.
Yeah, the failure of BBB, I think, did that pretty much to him. Although, you know, if you're a shoe collector, I think that's probably still of interest to get those BBB shoes out there. But I agree with you, Legend. He is not the vocal entity he once was, and maybe that's age, maybe that's the BBB failure, maybe that's the failure of his, I don't say failure of his children, I don't, that's pretty harsh, but the disappointment with how things have progressed for his 3 kids in the NBA, because it hasn't been pretty. I mean, Lonzo looked pretty good for a while, gets the nice big contract in Chicago, and it all goes wrong. Although I hear he is actually working out here, working out in SoCal, and actually looking pretty good. So hopefully he can get his career back on track. LaMelo, you know, LaMelo's the middle kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so yeah, we all know what happened there as far as his career going on through, and then of course, you know, what's gone on in Charlotte, but we'll see what happens. So again, I have LaMelo Ball. Again, if it does go south, he does become a malcontent. I think it's something that teams will take an interest in because he's 23, 24, still has upside and could get his career on track. But then again, the ball part of it is such a stigma. A stigma in regards to that. It's going to be hard for that to overcome anytime soon. But Legend, I think we could almost copy and paste what Alfred and you said about Charlotte and onto Detroit. But I want to go ahead and Detroit later on because that's obviously a team that we'll discuss later on. But any other teams that you think stand out to you before I hit up Alfred with the one I was going back and forth on him earlier?
The only one I could think of is the one you just brought up was Detroit, who did absolutely nothing. I don't even know where they're going with that.
You don't like Tobias Harris? That guy falls into more money. I don't know how he does it continuously. I want his agent.
Best agent ever. I mean, Oh my goodness. They're on my list too. They got to be. And Legend, I'll let you start. But as far as Tobias Harris goes,
he is a nice guy. From what I hear, he's a great guy. And absolutely a good guy to have in the locker room. But
right, man, and he gets a ton of flack, and I think a lot of it comes from the amount of money he's getting paid, being the kind of role he's in. And of course, it's Philadelphia. You know how those people are. He's going to catch flack if he, breathes oxygen the wrong way, in and of itself. But he's not a bad player by any means. But he's as far as Detroit goes, it's like he's not meant to be the number one option there. They really, I think, are just trying to work on Cade Cunningham to see what he can bring. And I think it's good for Tobias Harris, regardless of how it benefits Detroit, because Tobias Harris now is in a spot where there's not a lot of pressure right now to win sort of anything. It's more of a developmental type of thing. He can shine a little bit there, getting a lot of touches on the ball. He's a good shooter. I think his stat line is like 17 points per game on almost 50% shooting. Like he has a really good touch at times. And with Detroit, landing him, and then also the other one, Evan Fournier. I mean, like an aging former shooter. It just seems like they're getting, older guys to sort of be a stepping stool and mentor for young guys they have like Jaden Ivey and then Cade Cunningham, who I think is the centerfold to this team right now. Legend, I think it's similar to Charlotte, right? I mean, it's just like a bunch of meh, and they didn't really, push themselves in a positive direction or didn't move the needle in the direction they needed to move. They're sort of just kind of treading water right now, figuring out what to do and who to call for rescue. So it's not Tobias Harris or Evan Fournier. I'll tell you that. They're good for filling spots needed to, lift up the young guys. But beyond that, that's about it.
Fournier's gone though. He just signed with a team overseas, so he is gone. Yes,
my mistake.
He's finally out of the league. But Legend, you proposed Detroit, and when you look at on Sport Track, Tobias Harris will be probably an answer to the trivia question down the road at some point in time, because I don't know if it includes his upcoming salaries of about $52 million for the next 2 years. $52 million for the next 2 years for a guy that's 32 right now and has done what he's done. But he's earned close to by the time it's over, he'll earn over $250 million. Just let that sink in. Let that sink.
His agent so bad.
Yeah, so NBA money too.
Exactly. So tell us your thoughts on why Detroit really floundered this offseason.
To me, it feels like it's like a repeating cycle. Every season, it's the same thing every year. You bad, go get a draft pick. Maybe it's a hit or miss. A lot of times a miss, and then back to the same season all over again. Go lose probably about 50 to 60% of your games, and it's like it's an instant replay over and over. And it's like, where are you guys going with this franchise? You got Cade, so that's a good pickup. Tobias, shout out to his agent, man. I need you so bad for my salary, for my contract negotiations. But that franchise, I don't know where it's going. You keep repeating yourself.
Yeah, they brought in a new GM. They fired Monty Williams with 5 or 6 years left on his contract.
I think about 6.
That blew me away. I never thought any team, especially in that bad of a situation, would just say, sure, let's just go ahead and fire him. It's only $40-some million. Let's go ahead and do it. Let's bring a new coach in here and let's pay him a ton of money as well. Absolutely. I do not understand it. And this is, again, a new regime that came in there. Okay, the old regime did terrible. Absolutely terrible moves. I get that. I understand that. But it does not seem... Is it Trajan Langdon that's the GM in Detroit? Am I mistaken on that? The new GM? But if the new GM in Detroit is not getting off to a great start, I mean, they need shooting. I mean, as great as Stone Hansen likes fellows, and I saw him in the G League, and I like him as well as a scorer, I don't know how much he stretches the defense for you, because he's not a high percentage shooter, never has been yet so far, but we'll see how that works out. I do think he can score 20 in the league, but again, he's a scorer, not a shooter, so I don't know what it did to overall affect your team. You've got a lot of guys that are going to shoot bricks on that team, and then a lot of older guys that are supposed to be your more accurate shooters. So it's a weird mix, Legend. It definitely is, but that was a very good pick that you had with Detroit. So it is Trajan Langdon in Detroit. Yes,
it is.
Yeah,
the old one was who? Troy Weaver.
Yes,
right.
Yeah, he was probably hiding in shame somewhere.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, they don't. I guess I'm trying to think who else. I mean, the other moves they made, it wasn't Fournier I was thinking of. It was Malik Beasley. I don't know how I got them confused.
Oh yeah, Malik Beasley. Yeah, they signed him to a 1-year deal, I believe.
Right.
And he could give them 40%. Tobias could give them 40%. They've got older shooters there that are going to chuck it up and get 40%. But the rest of the team, again, Cunningham has never materialized to be that superstar player people were hoping for, with an elite shooting talent that we have yet to see. So this is the year he's got to break out. This is the year he's got to step it up. I think the whole season is based on him. But if that's the case, guys, they make themselves better. And if they improve 5 to 10 games better than what they did last season, that may put them out of the mix for something that they sorely need, another one more top draft pick.
Right. Yeah. Kings. I'll call them the kings of the Cooper Flag sweepstakes. I mean, that's what they're really aiming for now. And it's kind of copy and paste of last year's team with newer names in there. So like I said, instead of Evan Fournier, it's Malik Beasley and whatnot. So it's just continuing to kind of develop the talent you have. And they have a ton of it. One guy we didn't mention either, I don't think, is Asar Thompson. I might have missed that or zoned out, but
yes, he played solid, really solid.
Yes. Very impressive. Loved what he had too. They have a ton of it. I mean, it's accumulating, sort of, but it's just the wins have not been put together. And you fire a coach that had a ton of his contract left, and I'm not sure how. Maybe you find a way to sort of, have a new guy in there that pushes them in a more winning direction with the people they have. But at the same time, I think you want to cash in on another top pick before you start to do that and really do it, because you didn't really, it's like we said about Charlotte, earlier, you didn't do anything to move you towards a way to get up into the standings. So it's clear to me that they're fighting for the Cooper Flag sweepstakes, and yeah, that's where they're at. Same thing as Charlotte, really.
Once again, it is the legend. Legend350. You got to go ahead and check out his new channel. It is in the description below. I copied and pasted it. It's right there for you. Also, as well, of course, Alfred Ezman from Orlando Magic Daily. Is going to be working on some other projects, so please support him today on Twitter. The Twitter at Alfred Ezman right there for you. Cool, bro. Golden rule number 1. Do not talk smack on the Rays if your team, the Angels, absolutely blows chunks themselves. Okay?
Is that who he likes, by the way?
Yes. He had predicted before the beginning of the season, and because I'm a fellow Angels fan, although it's now maybe aligning back to the Dodgers, which I used to love as a kid because the Angels absolutely suck. He had said that they would win the World Series, and I told him, that's not going to happen. They're not going to come in close. And B, Mike Trout would get hurt again early in the season and totally derail the season. Gee, didn't take a genius to figure that out. Happened. Boom. I told them years ago. I told him and Jamie Sweet, who's on the show as well, a lot, who's an Angels fan. I said, we should have traded Ohtani and Trout years ago, and you got absolutely nothing for them.
Cool, bro. I'll give your team some advice before we move on with more NBA stuff. If you are in any spot where you are not going to contend whatsoever, no matter who you have, do what these guys do and trade it all away, and you'll have the #1 farm system in Major League Baseball, and you have a future in front of you. It's that simple.
Getting back to the Lakers, I know that someone that was watching after we went off the air on one of our previous shows talking about get rid of the overaged, washed up 30-year-old plus players on the team. And I said, well, that's our top 2 players on the Lakers.
Right.
Go ahead, trade them. Get a ton of assets in return. Go all in on the tanking. But the problem is the Lakers front office mindset will not allow them to do that. So that's another depressing thought right there for you. Maybe that's the look I put on the face of Rob Pelinka on a JPEG for today's show. But getting back to the worst off seasons, Alfred, man, got nothing but a ton of respect for you. Legend, absolutely same thing. But I am going to have to come back with some smack on Alfred. Don't worry, it's not leading with the Lakers. Believe me, the Lakers stink too. But I do think the Utah Jazz, I know you put them as amongst the best. Mm-hmm. I do think they missed opportunities would be my best way of saying so, because by signing Lauri Markkanen and doing that contract and not trading him for a ton of assets, I understand he likes it there. I understand they want him as a foundational piece, but to me, he's not a #1. He's not a guy that you're going to build around. He's a guy that's going to get 27 to 35 wins, which when you should be tanking as well, you should be in the Cooper Flag sweepstakes, and they still will be.
Right.
But the problem is better your odds for the long term. And the thing is, I just don't see a quick fix with Utah with Lauri Markkanen there. It's not because he can't play at that level. It's just because the fact that you signed him to that really high value contract, you know, that's a contract that may not age well. It may not. We'll wait and see. I'm not still convinced that it will. But if it does, okay, that's fine. But if it doesn't, you're still going to go ahead and try it. It makes it harder to do a trade down the road. I really think they missed the opportunity to better their team long term by not trading him, getting a ton of assets, and setting themselves up for a really good draft pick in a really good year, most likely next season, Alfred. So with all due respect, sorry.
That's okay.
I'm going to say Utah probably underwhelmed me this offseason. And Legend will decide it between us here in a minute, Legend. We got to get you involved on this. Go ahead, Alfred.
So, for me, we talked about it last time, so refer to the last episode I was on about it. My thing is, Gerald, I cannot deny you're right. Lauri Markkanen did get paid like a number one gets paid. And I am not.
Well, they all get paid that now. If you're anywhere near it, you're going to get paid it, whether regardless of you have that value or not. It's just now a fact of the CBA. You're just going to get it.
Yeah, and I mean, he's obviously. I think it's good to just have him for. I mean, it's a pretty long contract, so it's good to have him for that extended amount of time. My thing that really pulled me toward them was not the free agency aspect. I have them as one of, if not the top draft class from this past season out of all the teams in the NBA, just because I loved the people they brought in, and Cody Williams, Isaiah Collier, and then Kyle Filipkowski as well. You know, it is clear to me that they are, you know, toward not even toward, they're kind of in the middle of a rebuilding sort of phase with who they have, but they have tons of young talent that can impress this season. I mean, you know, it's a bunch of big guys. Collier, not necessarily, but Filipkowski, and then Cody Williams. Cody Williams can score at all three levels of the hoop. He really put on a show in Colorado. Filipkowski, he's a little more interesting. I'm interested to see what he'll do against NBA big man. But again, you can't deny what he did in college was great as well. The biggest thing is the guys they have now, Gerald, and I kind of am leaning more toward what you said on this, the Sextons and the John Collins and the Clarksons, maybe. It might be time to move on. If they decide to do that, Gerald, they're taking the route you're saying, the Cooper Flag sweepstakes, which is fine. I just don't know if this young talent...
Lauri Markkanen may come up with a hangnail injury at some point in time that may keep him out a good portion of the season. Ouch! Right. Oh, ow! Oh! I think it's Lauri. Sit down. It's okay. Rest that up. Stay home with the family. It's okay.
Right. We're 13th in the West. Oh, my knee is killing me. Goodness gracious. But but if they're at a point, I think, come the trade deadline or really throughout the season where they're close to a play-in spot with who they have on the floor, I'm not shocked at all if they still find a way to compete. I don't think they win a playoff series, but it's just hard to sort of, you know, backtrack the progress you make in a season, in my opinion. That's how I'd approach it. And again, I think the young influx of talent they had really kind of made their offseason. And like I said, Legend, when you were on with Gerald doing the best off seasons this season, you picked a lot of the big teams. I was kind of scouring through the nooks and crannies of the league for teams. I'm a nerdy about this, so I'm scouring through the nooks and crannies. And I was kind of intrigued and piqued by what the Jazz did. So they could take a route like Gerald, absolutely. But I think if they're somewhat competitive towards a play in the West, I don't see them shipping out as much as they normally would or tanking, so to speak. But that's my opinion on it. I totally get what Gerald is saying, though. I would have denied.
Let me see. Forget Golden State. Sorry, Legend. I know you're man. I would have gone to Sam Presti's office. I would have, if I was Danny Ainge, I would have flown to Oklahoma City, knocked on his door, said, "How you doing, my friend? Let's make a deal for Lauri Markkanen," and got a ton of assets. And you know, Danny Ainge, he's going to get young players and multiple draft picks. If the Bulls, and sorry out there, Xbox, because I know you're a Giddy fan out there, but you got to get assets. You got to get draft picks when you're making a trade like that. And they blew it in Chicago, and they may be on my list here in a second. But Legend, I will let you decide good or bad off season in Salt Lake City.
I'm like right in that middle, but I gotta go with the. I feel like, man, I would have been like, you know what? I better go and ship him out and go and get this Cooper Flag. I'm going to start over and just call it because I agree with Gerald. He's not a number one. He's not a number one person, and I feel like you're paying number one money for the wrong person. And I just feel like the team is just going to be winning probably about maybe 30 to 40 some games. Play-in team
can't get Cooper Flag, Legend. You know, and Alfred will look smart next year if they do and pair him up alongside or Boozer. Which Boozer is the better of the Boozer twins? I forget which. Cameron? I think Cameron Boozer. I think that's
right.
Yeah. So okay, if that happens to Utah and they do in Atlanta and jump up 6, 7, 10 spots, Alfred looks like a genius, absolutely. But those are not the greatest odds. That's
right.
I just do try to do things because I've been here in Vegas so long. I try to think in terms of trying to make my odds as good as possible. So Legend, so you would say you would have traded Markkanen as well.
I would have too, just to go in and cash in while he's already worth a good little bit to a lot of teams right now.
Because you know Golden State wanted to give up everything for him.
And I wanted him badly too, but I saw they wouldn't let him go. So yeah.
And I still would have moved on. I still would have gone to New Orleans or Oklahoma City, teams with a ton of draft picks and young talent, and probably would have gone in their direction. No disrespect, Legend. It's just that Kuminga is a really good player, and you know Podziemski, despite what Rodell says about him, it's going to be a pretty good player for them as well. I still think that they had better options to go ahead and trade Lowry Markkanen. But, you know, again, if they do, they will not make the playoffs next year. So if they do move up and get the number one draft pick and get Cooper Flag, Alfred looks like a genius. So, you know, that's what I think Danny Ainge is counting on. And, you know, I guess for Utah fans out there, that's going to be the best that you're going to have to get, because right now, it's weird because those teams that are going to be in those 25, 27, 31, 35, just out of the playoff mix, out of the play-in mix, they're going to be thinking as far as how do we make our chances better? How do we position ourselves against other teams to make ourselves get a better shot in the draft? So the last 3 weeks of the season, I think, will be very interesting at those teams that are on the bottom echelon of each conference. It's just
low management trying to get Cooper.
Absolutely. They'll bring up all their G League players. You know, oh man, we have this massive flu bug going around. Oh, I can't play all of our starters today or something like that. So we'll see. But once again, it is the Lakers Fast Break. It is NBA Observations with Legend350. Please go ahead and check out his new channel. That's now below. The link is below. There's no excuse why you can't check it out. And also as well, Alfred Ezman at Alfred Ezman on Twitter and the OrlandoMagicDaily.com. All right. So we've mentioned some few teams already, some good teams, really good conversation. I told you this would be the most fun for us. It's always, you know, this channel loves to talk about the bad almost as much as, well, actually probably more than the good at times, but need I digress on that. Alfred, who else stands out to you? Because again, you know, I still think there's some teams that might have underwhelmed this offseason.
If I guess I'll build off of what you said, Chicago. I guess we'll move on to them. Again, I think getting Josh Giddey, I think in and of itself was a pretty good move, but what are you going to do, you know, outside of that? This is a team that, I mean, we talked about it. We saw it last year with the Hawks and, you know, and the Bulls themselves. It was just, you know, it was the Sixers toward the top of the play-in, and then the bottom of the play-in, the East was, you know, who's going to get eliminated by them, so to speak. And, you know, it was the Bulls have found themselves, I think, in the worst possible spot to be in as an NBA team, which is no man's land. You're not rebuilding, but you're not competing whatsoever. You are stuck in playoff zone forever for the time being. Right. So what do you do when you do that? From the team I write about, I know it from experience. You blow it up and you start over. As much as it, you know, stinks, it's what you got to do. And it worked out for the team that I write about. I mean, they're going to be a playoff team in some sort of facet next season, more than likely. And, the Bulls can easily do that. But the question is, what are you going to do with what you have there? And I'll let you guys get into that. But yeah, I think the Bulls really are they were heading into this offseason. They were stuck in that territory, and they really didn't do a whole lot to determine what path they were taking. So what are they going to do? That's the big question.
I mean, Ball, his situation obviously is still an issue. We don't know about the health status of Zach LaVine. They still think they should look to move him. They've got Kobe White. The problem is Kobe White, you were the point guard doing really well, one of the NBA's most improved players, and then you bring in another point guard now that has to start ahead of him. So where do you put Kobe White? Do you put him at, out of position at shooting guard? Okay. Giddy, though, again, to our Australian fans down there, I know that it's a question. He's still got plenty of time to develop, but he has to get, at least like with Dalton Connect, get to at least close to average on defense. That's all I ask. Don't be a turnstile. Keep yourself out there, when it's needed. I mean, Oklahoma City obviously lost confidence in his defense, which was part of the reason why. But the fact is he's not stretching out the floor as well. Get to a point where you're 37%. I'm not asking for 40. If you get to 37%, I think that's a big win for the Bulls. And I think he can do that. I really have faith that he can develop his game to where he could become adequate in those areas where he needs to the most, because he's such an outstanding playmaker. So he can do it. But the question I have for Legend on the Bulls, and also you, Alfred, why in the world would you pay Patrick Williams a $90 million contract?
Oh, God almighty.
Oh.
For a guy that's only averaged 10 points a game.
How that guy still got a job?
I mean, we talk about the Lakers that bid against themselves for the $32 million contract. That is nowhere near as bad as what you do. So tell me, Legend, your thoughts on Patrick Williams. Again, a nice player, not aggressive as far as the shooting, but he can shoot from the outside, shoots anywhere near close to or right around 40% from behind the three, but he is not a guy who's willing to step it up as of yet. Your thoughts on Patrick Williams?
Well, whoever his agent is, he secured you the bag somehow, because that money is very questionable. Good player, but you overpaid for him, and he's just not worth that type of money. That's money you could have used towards something better, something else. And I just feel like that's just a moment of overpay, and you just out here throwing away money.
It's $18 million, so as it gets older, it's not as bad looking, Alfred, but still, that's a lot of faith in a player that hasn't really produced at a high level as of yet.
Yeah, something we don't know.
Right. And you didn't, if you're Chicago, you did not need to do that. I mean, at all. You can absolutely re-sign him if you wanted to, but it did not need to be for, how many years is it? Can you tell me?
It's 5 years, $90 million.
Right.
Well, it's a 4+1, but the one is his option.
Okay.
So he may not pick it up. He may be, if he doesn't pick it up, that means he's playing at a much better level, and it was a success.
Right.
If he does pick up that last year, that tells you all you need to know.
I want to get paid. Right. And I mean, you did not need to do it for that long or anything like that. And I mean, it's just that's
who are they bidding against?
No, pretty much nobody. I don't know, who else would want him really. No one in contention, I don't really think, unless you need like a depth piece. But who knows the thought process with that. And Zach LaVine is a big question. The other is Nikola Vucevic. You got to find some taker on him at this point, because that has not worked. I think you got him over the peak of his mountain as far as his play goes. And I mean, you need to find a taker on him in some sort of way, shape, or form to do what? Get assets, like you say, Gerald, and get these picks, because I love Buzelis. I loved what he did in the summer league. I think he's going to be pretty good. Again, he's not going to be a guy that's going to move the needle for them in year one, but it shows, what Chicago can do if they were to start over and put themselves in the right direction, like they did with getting him. Kobe White also. I mean, Josh Giddey, also could play a good kind of role there if you sell off the guys who, you need other teams to take, like Levine and Vucevic. And obviously, the Pat Williams thing is questionable, but man, I don't. They are in purgatory bad. I don't know if there's a team, with that sort of label to them as much as they have it, and they're going to be ones, if they don't find a way to sell them off. I have a hard time believing they're even remotely close to a play-in spot whatsoever. You mentioned
Vucevic, Joe. Guess what? His average for his next 3 years is right around 20 million. What we talk about for centers, that's the going rate. Yeah. I mean, we talked about it earlier with Ivica Zubac. I really think it's a solid defensive player and a guy that's going to get you a double-double or close to it. So, yeah, I mean, Vucevic has to get back to that old player that he was. But like you said, he is an old player. So,
yeah,
getting off of his contract, getting off of the best thing Chicago can do, Legend, in my opinion, I'll hand it over to you on the Bulls. The best thing they can do is go all out and just try to get rid of Levine, get rid of Vucevic. You're stuck with Williams. He doesn't cost a whole lot, $18 million, relatively speaking. So it's something I guess you'd be okay with. Ball, his contract is going to come off the books, I think, after this year. So, I mean, the future could look better, but you need to get off some of these dead weight contracts or contracts for players beyond their peak, as like you said, the peak of the mountain, Alfred. So Legend, your thoughts on the Bulls before we head to another team that might be interesting as well.
Yeah, I gotta agree. You gotta go and start moving these contracts and just go and get off some of these players and start moving toward the future and just really start rebuilding this franchise and turning it around, because I know as a Chicago fan, it got to be frustrating to kind of keep looking at the same roster and it's going through the motion over and over. And I guess I can understand why DeMar DeRozan won it out now. But you got to go and move off these contracts and move forward.
Kurt's asking if they have their draft pick this year. I'm going to look it up right now. But the next team I want to go ahead on the list, guys. And once again, it is the Legend350. Please go ahead and check out his brand new YouTube channel today. It's in the description below. And, of course, Alfred Ezman from the Orlando Magic Daily. Can I ask you, Alfred, your question while I look up the Bulls draft choices?
Yeah.
I want to ask you this. What the heck is Portland doing up there in the Pacific Northwest? I don't know.
I feel like
I don't know.
I don't know either. Yeah. And I feel like they could have gotten a ton if they sent away Anthony Simons. That's a start. I think there's a lot of people that would take him as a guard, because he is one. I don't think he's going to be the star of any team, but he is a starting guard on a lot of these teams that look to contend that need it, if anything. And they really didn't do anything in that regard. You bring in Denny from Washington. Denny had flashes. He had certain games where he was great, but again, it's like, what? He's not gonna do anything major. I do like Donovan Clingan a lot, but that kind of throws into question, what are you doing with DeAndre Ayton? And I just don't know how that's going to work out. You have probably
Donovan Clingan there. You just drafted a 7-footer,
right? Yeah, I mean, you have, and it's one of the premier centers from this past draft, and you obviously want to kind of see what he can do and whatnot. And you already have a guy who obviously wants to make a lot of money. There's no secret about that with DeAndre Ayton. I have a hard time thinking he'll stay there through the trade deadline. That might be a ship out if they can or are able to do it. But yeah, it just, some of these moves, it's just like I don't really understand what they're doing. Once again, they're going to be in the Cooper Flag sweepstakes. That's for sure. I guess we could say that. And that's a theme with a lot of these teams. But
the thing that what you don't want to do, you don't want to pull, and Legend again, I'm sorry, I'm picking on one of your teams, Atlanta. You don't want to do Atlanta where you draft an Okongwu and then you have him sit behind Clint Capella forever.
Right.
Until the guy hits middle age himself. And now you expect him to produce, well, actually after next year when Capella's contract comes off, or they trade him away at the trade deadline, whatever. Yeah, and now you're expecting Okongwu just to pop in 5 years later after you draft him and say, go to it, you're the starter now. The last thing you want to do is to Donovan Clingan 5 years behind DeAndre Ayton and say, You're the starter now. Go to it. I think it's crazy.
Yeah, I think it is crazy. And the other thing too, in that Denny trade that they did, I think they gave up some draft capital, which is very weird for them to do. I mean, in the position you're in, right? You need that. You need that like water. So it's strange. I think Denny has some upside. He's, like we said about LaMelo, he's young. I'm not comparing the two, but I'm just saying he's young. You know, he's a little bit positionless. He had some pretty good games this year for Washington for what it's worth. Maybe he can find a role around Sharp and Henderson with what they're doing. But I mean, you have you have a conflicting pick with centers. You gave up draft capital. You got to do something at the deadline, because I have a hard time believing you'll be out of the basement. In fact, I'll say it right now, you will be in the basement of the Western Conference, and you got to make a move with Ayton. That's the only way you kind of save this in some facet. And do what? Get that draft capital back. I mean, that's really all I can say about that team. That's honestly probably one of the worst ones we've done so far on this show, and that's saying a lot.
That's sad. You're worse than Detroit.
Yeah. It's close.
But there's some talent on that team, guys.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And Legend, I mean, how have they continuously just screwed it up time and time again? And this offseason, like Alfred said, and I elaborated on myself, man, you have every reason to go ahead and build this team the right way, and it seems like Portland is not doing that.
I mean, I didn't think it's come down to this. You just got a bad front office, just not knowing what they're doing and just not making the right choices, and it is costing your current team and then towards your future. And I feel bad for the fans out there for Portland. They feel like they're not trying. I don't know what they're doing. And I mean, for Chauncey Billups, all he can do is coach what you give him. It ain't his fault.
Darren and M-Easy say take a chance on Robert Williams for a team out there like the Lakers.
Right.
You're betting and gambling on his knees.
Yes.
See where he's at in game 30. See where he is at physically in game 30 of their season before we start to go ahead and target him in trade talks or anything like that, because I'd have to see it to believe it. He has had one rough period of time with his injuries. So that's a problem. But it is, of course, the Lakers Fast Break. Truly appreciate you joining us. It is Legend350 and Alfred Ezman. Got to go ahead and get them a big shout out. But there are other teams that I think did poorly. We're always forgetting, guys, about the guys on the other side of the border in Toronto. What did they do in Toronto, Alfred?
Well, it's a good question. I'll start with something good. I like Jacoby Walter a lot. I'll start with a good thing for them. But again, I don't think you're going to depend upon him a whole bit. They were pretty active this past season's trade deadline. They dealt some people out.
That was their off season, was the trade deadline.
Pretty much, yeah. And actually, I mean, you guys can go back and quote me in that trade deadline show I did with Gerald. I liked what they did in the sense that it was like a retooling instead of rebuilding. I think they were going to take a step back, like they did. But it's almost like they just brought in new people to evaluate. But, right, Kurt Affair just said it. It's almost like purgatory, or they're heading toward that direction like the Bulls are.
And Barrett are good, but
right.
are for what you're paying them, especially that new contract for Quickly. I like Quickly. Been talking about Quickly since he was drafted. I thought of him very highly in my mock drafts leading up to that draft, but I thought he was sixth man of the year with his final year in New York, guys. But man,
$175 million.
Wee.
Goodness gracious for Emmanuel Quickly. Those two, I think, can start, but they're not going to be the guys you go to at play after play to score and whatnot.
Well, let me ask Legend this, and I'll bring it back to you, Alfred. Is Scotty Barnes that guy? I mean, I remember my friend, Rafael Barlow, he was live on the air for Locked On. At the time, he was drafted and got just absolutely criticized from all over the world in regards to his comments saying that Scotty Barnes, why do you draft him at number 5 as a glue guy? Why do you draft a glue guy at number 5? Is Scotty Barnes the guy going forward that you spend a ton of money on? He just signed an extension. You're banking that he is going to be the future of the Toronto Raptors, Legend? I know there are parts of his game I do like, but again, like Lauri Markkanen, is he a number one? I think he has, to me, potential to be a number one, but I don't know if he ever lives up to that. I don't know if he's the glue guy that Rafael says, or he's the number one guy like he's paid right now in Toronto.
I like him. There's parts of the game I really do like, but there are times I kind of look at him play and I'm like, I mean, I feel like I understand you being number one option right now, but on a winning team, I don't think I see it number one. Maybe as a number 2 or 3 on a winning team, but number 1, I don't know. I feel like you're kind of banking, hoping he's gonna turn into that, but he's not even good as Kawhi Leonard was when he was there, when he won you that first championship.
Right.
Not close.
Any thoughts, Alfred?
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, it's kind of like Quickly and RJ Barrett. He can start for them, you know what I mean? But I don't think he's going to be the guy who, is their number one, at least anytime soon still.
I mean, I see signs. I see glimmers that he could take it. Like Kurt Ferris says, he has potential to be that guy. The question is, does he ever become that guy? Right.
And I mean, the biggest thing too, I guess I'll go back to him. It's kind of like similar to what we talked about with the Lakers and Connect. They can, it's different in the sense of what steps they're getting to. Connect can, push the Lakers if he has an all rookie season past a play-in possibly. The way for the Raptors to get into a play-in realistically, I think, is if Jacoby Walter does the same thing. I'm not in any way suggesting it, but if it were to happen that way, they can do it with the talent they have. They can't get far in the playoffs because, again, they don't have the guy, to go to play after play. But it's kind of, if you're a Raptors fan out there, it's like you're sort of, starting to meddle within the purgatory territory and stuff. And that's not, again, like I said about the Bulls, not where you want to be. I won't say they're in it yet, but they're getting close toward it. You didn't really, you paid a couple guys a ton of money.
That total contract.
Yeah.
On the trade.
Right.
Not the wisest move.
No. And you guys and there's people in the comments raving about Scotty Barnes. I like him too. I think he's great.
I'm not fully bought in on Barnes. I'm sorry.
Right.
Yes. You got to start showing me the wins. Start to put it together.
Games.
Shooting more efficiently. You got to put things together just a little bit more in order to say he is that dude. So
they did
play in tournament.
Right.
Yeah.
Fun fact. Speaking of turn the shooting up a notch, they did pass on. I don't know if you guys remember this draft. They passed on Jalen Suggs to get him, and we did see Jalen Suggs shooting go through the roof. In respect to what he did previous years. So it's interesting to see how really it weighs in and stuff with Toronto, because they obviously saw something in Barnes that they liked more than Suggs at that 4th pick. And
was he 4th or 5th? I'm sorry.
He was 4th. Suggs was the 5th.
My bad.
Yeah. All good. And, it's weird because, like, leading up to that draft, Jalen Suggs. And then they flip the script and take Scotty Barnes. I was under the impression up until the draft that we were going to take Scotty Barnes. But obviously, the roles were reversed. I was like, oh, we'll get Jalen Suggs. So interesting to see how it plays out. The extension we talked about, they gave it to him. I like him a lot. He's just not – and he could be one of your main guys. I don't know if he's your number one guy like they're thinking. And they got to be careful this season with what they're going to do leading up to the deadline and stuff, because they can quickly get with, quickly bunk up with the Chicago Bulls and be in Eastern Conference purgatory, in the foreseeable future. So we'll have to see. But this is a make or break season for them, really, and we'll have to see how it works out based on what they did in last season's deadline.
See it. There's varying, he's the guy. Yet Joe's saying in the chat, Barnes is good, nothing more. Curtis says Barnes has a high motor and highly switchable. To me, he's like Lauri Markkanen. He's being paid to be a number one guy, so he better start being a number one guy. It's that simple.
Right.
On a team that is progressing you even more wins. I mean, Toronto has just a good enough team to not really count as far as a factor for another 35 win season for Toronto is not going to help them at all. And that won't get them any closer with a mid tier draft choice. So yeah, it's just going to be very interesting to see, can Scotty Barnes elevate the Toronto Raptors and put them in a better position. They could be thought of as one of the surprise teams in the East, in an East back end that might need, we might be in need of some surprises, like we saw with Indiana, like we saw with some other teams. Orlando, surprise last season. We could see that with Toronto as well, but we'll see. We'll definitely see. But guys, I know that we've had some great suggestions, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention a team who was on the top of the mountain just 2 seasons ago. And little by little, the mountain's just losing a little bit of support, as far as, just a little bit of, so the pecking away. Rocks are just kind of starting to fall off. And that's the Denver Nuggets. After losing Brown previous season and also Green, key pieces of their bench, they lost KCP this offseason and replaced him with a Lakers friend of mine, none other than Russell Westbrook. So your thoughts? I think they had a bad offseason. I think that if they want to hold on to the team that they're at, I think they're still good enough to be a top 4 seed in the Western Conference, but they are not at a championship level until they make, until they get something done. The questions with Murray and his offseason are really out there because of how bad he played and how out of shape he played and looked. Even in the playoffs, he looked bad playing against the Lakers. So let's start with you, Legend. What level of concern, if you were a Denver Nuggets fan, do you have about their offseason?
I will be I'm gonna go to a 5, just because of what hurted them the most, and which it still gets me. I'm a little surprised they escaped that Lakers series. Is that you were getting nothing from that bench. That bench was just leaving you high and dry.
Yeah,
you just relying heavily on the starters to carry you through, and that's not going to win championships. You got to have a bench in order to make it. You can't rely on your starters to play a whole game. And that's what, to me, concerns me the most about this Denver Nuggets team is you didn't really make the bench get better. Like you got worse after you lost KCP. You brought in Russell Westbrook, which, he bring a spark off the bench, but not exactly what you needed. He's not going to be Green or anything Brown, what you had in that championship team. And other than that, that's it. That's all they did. And that's, to me, is a little concerning that you didn't do nothing major to improve that bench. That bench is still, to me, looks pretty bad. And you don't want to start making the Joker unhappy and he end up looking for a new home when you get towards the end of his contract.
Kurt says, we saw Jokic with Serbia against the world. Nuggets will be fine. Yeah, Nuggets will be fine. Without KCP, without a solid bench, without players to contribute as well as they once did, they may just be fine, Alfred, but they may not also be a championship contender.
Yep.
I was about to say, are they fine? Yeah, I think they're going to make the playoffs. They're going to make the playoffs still because they have Nikola Jokic on the team.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, they'll make the playoffs, but if you guys remember last season, at the top of the West, it was them, the T-Wolves, and the Thunder, kind of like in a close race for it. I don't know if they're hanging with those two, if they're at that level again, like they were last year. I think they're getting a top 6 spot in some facet. But, yeah, I think you lose a core championship guy in KCP to the Magic. Reggie Jackson, we talked about him leaving. Justin Holiday as well. The bench support you got in replacement this offseason was Dario Saric, who, he can provide some scoring. I think it's 8 points. I'm looking at it right now, 8 points a game, 46% from the floor, 37% from 3. So he can provide some scoring, but I don't know if he's necessarily a guy that's like, oh yeah, he's gonna replace what Kentavious Caldwell-Pope did. I don't know about him on defense doing that, or anything like that. And then you draft Deron Holmes as well from Dayton. Deron Holmes is a college guy I really liked. He's probably going to have to come off the bench and provide a lot of support as well. And I think a running theme with the teams we've talked about is it's a lot of these rookies who they're going to have to carry a good bit of load for these teams that didn't necessarily perform this offseason. And again, I don't know if Deron Holmes, at least in year 1, is able to do that. Maybe he has a pretty decent season, but those are really the two guys who you just don't really know about. Kurt just asked if he got injured for the season.
Yes, he did.
Maybe He did. So there you go. So obviously you get him for the future, and that's the other thing. You don't really even get him this year at all. So really just Saric, and outside of that, that's the only move you made to
you forgot about Russell Westbrook.
Yeah, whoopee.
Did you forget about Russell Westbrook?
Oh, maybe I did, but like I think that ship has sailed a little bit at this point.
How angry will he make Nuggets fans this season with all of his bricks that he has?
And turnovers.
But it's the shots. To me, it'll be the shots. It'll be the fact he'll try and do his regular bank shot and bank it off the rim and not come close, and people just hear the groans, or attempting threes while averaging 29% from the three-point line and chucking up three after three, and people groaning in the crowd in the Mile High City. I could just see it right now. Just, hey, but you've got 2 years to get that because you signed him for a 2-year contract. That was a real questionable move. Yeah. Well, the last team I want to cover, Legend, is not the Golden State Warriors, one of your teams. I think we covered them on a team that I think did okay. They did okay. They didn't do great because they lost Thompson. But then again, that's how do you see Thompson? But they did get a lot of quality rotation players to the mix. And as some say in the chat, they probably are at this point in time better than the Lakers. And I can't sit here and say I argue with you, based on how bad we did in the offseason as far as the Lakers are concerned. But the other team that you like, the Atlanta Hawks, they traded away DeJounte Murray in a trade I'm not sure I love as far as this is concerned. I think you could have gotten something better, personally. But it is what it is there. You did get Zachary Ricochet as the #1 pick. You better start him, is what I say. Again, don't do the Okongwu with him. He's your #1 draft pick. You, for God's sakes, don't do another Okongwu with him. Put him in the starting lineup and get his lumps and get his experience sooner rather than later. But I just feel underwhelmed, and I think that ever since they had that Eastern Championship, Conference Championship run, they've headed towards purgatory. Legend, I think again, that's where they stay.
Yeah, I gotta agree. I think we're gonna be looking like another lottery team again, and they gotta do right. Put our #1 pick. Let him play. Do not just sit this man behind anybody else. Let these guys grow, develop toward your future. Because it's not helping us if you do that in the long run, and give us something to hope for in the long run. So we won't feel like, well, just wasting another year and just blowing another season. Because you're just making money in Atlanta, and that's it.
Alfred, anything to add on when it comes to Atlanta before we head on out? Yeah, I think the one thing they did right, Legend, is they were better, actually pretty much way better when it was Trae Young without Murray, as opposed to Murray with Trae Young. They were almost 4 points per 100 possessions better with just Trae Young out there. So that's a good thing to look at. But yeah, I mean, I don't think you got a whole lot of, eye poppers back for DeJounte Murray in and of itself. And that's just going to be the biggest thing. I don't, like you said, Legend, they're really just kind of going to, honestly, Cooper Flag sweepstakes ? They could be in that category if they wanted to. Yeah, but do you expect them to do another 10-1 jump? Because right now they have enough talent again. Right. Unless they trade Capella, unless they trade Trae Young. Yeah. To be in that 27-35 sweepstakes number of wins during the season once again. Right. No, and you guys who watch the show, and Gerald, you know this, I've been like on the Trae Young trade possibility for a while now. But it's like if you're that's the hard part is if you're close to, it's what I talked about with Utah. If you're close to play-in contention, it's kind of really hard to say that's what you're going to do, because you can get a playoff spot in some facet, and it's almost heading toward purgatory maybe a little, but I don't really even think with them. I mean, you have a #1 pick coming in and Trae Young still on your team. I think it's just, you just really have to see what Ricochet does this year. I hope he does great. I like him a lot. It seemed like that was the pick they were going to go with as time got closer to the draft over Alex Sarr. And yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting season for them, make or break. Because again, you lose DeJounte Murray after that experiment and the guard room didn't work. And you just kind of got to evaluate. Maybe they take a year and just see where they're at. As much as that will, not be fun for Atlanta fans, that's might be the route you have to take, is just evaluate and see what you're at for a season. And if you don't make the playoffs, you have a lottery pick in some facet. You don't get Cooper Flagg, but you're probably going to get a good player because this class is miles, as of right now, miles better than this last one. So that's the outlook they have. It's kind of just, see where we're at.
But the thing is, during this offseason, that's when the GM should evaluate what team that you have and make those moves, Legend, right away. It decide, you know what, I'm all in or I'm all out, and just go in. And it just seems like when, Atlanta's one of those many teams, Lakers among those, where you step, they're like somebody that's about ready to get into the pool, but they're like 1 foot in, but the water's too cold for them to go in all the way.
Yeah, they got to make a decision. It's either you're going to go all in or you're not. You can't tip your tiptoe in there barely. You got to decide you're going to put your foot fully in there or just don't step in at all. They got to make a decision. And, ATL fans, they're going to sit here and keep waiting and waiting for you to turn this team around and start becoming something.
Well, guys, I told you this would be the best episode of the 3 in regards to the offseason. It's so much fun, more fun talking about who did crappy in the offseason, and it does include the Lakers. If you missed it and you're watching live, please go ahead and check out the front part, because the Los Angeles teams were the first 2 teams on the list.
Right, best for first, not best for last.
Yeah,
exactly. So, before we head on out, it is cheap plug time. Legend, I will let you go first, my friend. Again, I always appreciate both you and Alfred stopping by. We're going to have to work out as far as more NBA observations ASAP, because, again, we're in the dearth of the offseason. And since I didn't put out and just go all out on team projections and get out 30 separate interviews like I did last season, I'm doing a little bit more relaxed mode with some close compadres talking about the NBA this season leading up to training camp. We're going to have to work out some more schedule as far as availability for you guys, because you guys get so much positive reaction on your evaluations, and it's always greatly appreciated out there when you guys do. But Legend, tell us what you're doing with your brand new YouTube channel that people got to go ahead and check out and subscribe.
Well, I'm currently getting ready to drop my very first video for that channel, which is discussing the Caitlin Clark injuries, their battle for Rookie of the Year. I think
she is the Rookie of the Year. Clark, yes. I have now come off of Reese, now Clark. She's put the team above 500, and she's just got to cut down the turnovers. I saw her in the last game. She's dribbling, and all of a sudden she's like right there. She gets to the free throw line. Somebody automatically ripped the ball away from her like it was nothing. So she's got to cut down those turnovers. But then again, LeBron is the all-time leader in turnovers. So there you go. But yeah, Legend, go ahead. What other stuff are you working on your channel?
And then outside of that, I'm definitely planning on doing my first live stream on that channel, just to go into detail about this upcoming season. And I really want to discuss how I think this recent WNBA draft is definitely going to boost the WNBA ratings going forward and take that lead to newer heights. I think that lead is definitely going in the right direction with Clark and Reese and that entire draft class.
Well, there you go. And the link is down below in the description for both audio and video audiences out there. Alfred, not Alfred Ezman, right there on Twitter. OrlandoMagicDaily.com. What you got cooking right now? I know it's not NBA news season just yet, but I know you got some things on the back burner that you're working on right now.
Oh, yeah. So you guys, I've said it on the past few shows I've been on, what I'm really been doing, and you guys chop it up baseball every once in a while. Just take a quick basketball break, because why not? That's what I'm doing. College baseball in my area, the Southeast, is huge, within the SEC and stuff. I've been working on a lot of that stuff, weekly off-season show. Continue to view it. I know it's college football season, so it's like definitely taking a back seat in the back of the limousine compared to college football. But continue to view it if you're one of those baseball nerds the best you can, like me. As far as fan-sided stuff goes, I mentioned it on my last show, but I'm pretty much all but done with the Orlando Magic Daily, just because of job stuff coming up, a part-time job that includes writing for World Baseball Network. It's a lot of work within the Caribbean, Korean, those sort of international leagues and whatnot, as well as Major League Baseball and college baseball. So watch out for my work there. I'll be doing, pretty much around the clock stuff with them. And that's really the reason why I'm stopping at Fanside. It was just I'm getting more into the job field as time has gone on. So continue to watch out for those two things. Not to worry. I'll continue to watch the NBA as much as I have been, and watching both the Lakers and the Magic, just because I know that team like the back of my hand now. And always follow me on Alfred Ezman on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it at this point. No one cares. And I'll have my stuff all posted on there and just thoughts on the sports world in general. So just continue to hit my stuff up, please, especially if you like baseball.
Once again, it is Legend350. Please go ahead and support him today on his brand new channel, link below in the description, and also as well Alfred Ezman at Alfred Ezman on Twitter/X. I don't care personally, but I think Elon does. But again,
yes,
that's a whole different story indeed. But for everybody that's watching on this channel tonight, I actually am going to be posting an Inside Sports Fantasy Football. We're going to go live with that. Joe will be part of it as we go ahead and preview week 1 in the NFL, plus any last minute tips for your fantasy football draft. And I will ask Joe to take a drink because at the very end, Darren put up a super chat to go ahead and get Joe to take a swig. And so, Joe, you owe Darren a drink on that. So if you wish, again, it's purely voluntary on your part. But again, it is the Lakers Fast Break. It is, of course, Legend350 and Alfred Ezman. NBA observations. Indeed, these guys will be back hopefully sooner rather than later, based on their schedules. It's up to them, but they're always welcome back for some NBA observations right here at the Lakers Fast Break Podcast.